Milo Yiannopoulos announced on Tuesday that he resigned as technology editor at Breitbart News. His reason: he did not want the controversy surrounding his comments about paedophilia and relationships between boys and older men to damage the Breitbart name.
So the left wing has been predominantly negative about this, focusing on Milo Yiannopoulos' statements from the Joe Rogan interview, and they're kind of talking about what he was justifying and saying that he is saying paedophilia is okay. They say The Independent is quoted as saying he appeared to endorse sexual relationships between younger boys and older men, and he didn't condemn similar relationships between children and men in the actual interview.
So on the right-wing side of this issue, we also have them following the story. They're commenting factually on what has been said, and we have the editor-in-chief, Alex Marlow, of Breitbart News, who has expressed shock at Milo's indefensible context, but he also expressed the need to understand them in the context of his childhood experiences. And I think a lot of right-wing commentators have been saying this, that Milo has been taken out of context with his comments, and his known attitude as a provocateur is related into this. He's said very controversial things in the past. However, if you go over the interview and listen to it, then you can see his full intention behind the video.
So Milo obviously came out and did a talk about his point of view and why he was resigning, exactly what had happened. And in it he's quoted as saying, "I do not support pedophilia, period. It is a vile and disgusting crime, perhaps the very worst. There are selectively edited videos doing the rounds as part of a coordinated effort to discredit me from establishment Republicans that suggest I am soft on the subject." He's also said there are relationships between younger men and older men that can help a young gay man escape from a lack of support or understanding at home. And he says that's perfectly true and every gay man knows it. He claims that he was not talking about anything illegal and he did not refer to prepubescent boys when he was talking about sexual relationships.
So this is the section we're going to talk about our personal opinions on the matter. We're not claiming any of this is factual. This is just our views on the whole Milo controversy.
So I think that, one, this has been massively exaggerated by the press. It's clearly a witch hunt. Even if elements of it might be true, it's clearly targeting him and trying to discredit his name and not really actually that upset about what he said.
Yeah, I think you're completely right on this. I think the whole issue has been blown completely out of proportion. This video is over a year old. People have obviously seen this video before. The issue has been sat on right until Milo's at the height of his popularity. He's just about to have this book deal. He's just about to go to the CPAC conference. It's just perfect timing, if you think about this, that all of this has now been set off, that all the headlines are blowing up, everybody's raising this issue and making it into something. You also see it in the people who have made these specific editorial cuts in it, so Milo looks worse than he actually is. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I'm kind of inclined to, I might be a bit biased on the matter because I enjoy Milo Yiannopoulos. I find him entertaining. But
well, who doesn't find him entertaining on
yeah,
that one?
He's fucking really funny. Regardless of what you think about his political views, I think he is quite entertaining, and what he says is generally quite funny, I think. And
I think we all know as well, he is a provocateur. The whole point of everything he does, he is a provocateur.
Yeah, shock value.
He does shock value. All of his statements are designed to provoke a reaction in people.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they've done here. And I think he's kind of been his own worst enemy in this case, where he's kind of fucked himself in a way where he's provoked too far. And I think what he did say, there was clearly, in the way he's clearly speaking, at least in his mind, some truth. He's speaking about his own personal views on the matter, and he doesn't sound like he's joking, other than when he said Father Michael improved his oral ability.
I gotta admit, that bit did have me cracking up on that.
But I think that predominantly what he was saying was more a matter of, he thinks that there are certain young people who he thinks consent is a bit more complicated because they might be fully mentally and for the most part, mentally and physically developed to a point where they could consent. And they're not being targeted as children, but I think that it's a very difficult kind of area, and I think
this is what we were discussing before. The whole issue of age of consent. We have to have an age of consent. At the end of the day, it smooths over these sort of things. But depending where you look, as he said in his in his press conference. In his mother's native Germany, the age of consent is 14. In England, the age of consent is 16. In America, the age of consent is 18. In the very definition of age of consent, people have different opinions on it. And whilst I don't agree that generally the age of consent should be, seeing as we're both born and bred in England, we're both in agreement that the age of consent at 16 is probably fairly accurate, correct?
Yeah, I think that works as quite a good point
But
for...
as we're saying, we're born into that. That's what we've grown up with.
It's a culture thing. It's entirely
it's
culture.
Definitely a culture thing.
You could go to a culture where it might even be acceptable right at the onset of puberty, because that's what we did when we were animals. And obviously, societally, we've moved on from that, and obviously, people have reached a point of intelligence now where they can be more targeting, and it's not necessarily just a mating thing, it's actually a pleasure thing, so people are more likely to do it for...
And people are more likely to take advantage, and yes, people do take advantage of it. Any system, though, people can take advantage of, and in some regard, there are those few exceptions where you get extremely, extremely mature people of a younger age, but that doesn't make the situation right. And Milo, everybody, I think, on both sides of the issue can come down. He was sexually abused. He was taken advantage of by an older man. Whilst at the time he might have enjoyed it, he might have appreciated whatever he wants to say about it, but it has obviously affected him, and it's affected his views on the matter, and that's expected. It is a shocking thing. It traumatized somebody, even in a way that they might not have considered it as traumatizing.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people are actually ignoring in this, on both sides, both left and right wing, are kind of ignoring the fact that he was a child who was a victim of sex abuse, and he said himself part of the reason he thought he could joke about it was because being someone who's been through it, that's kind of, he says that's his way of kind of working through it.
Mechanism.
And I feel like a lot of what's being ignored here is, a lot of what he said could be construed as being quite a fucked up view, and I'm not disregarding that some of what he said is a kind of, it's a warped viewpoint on something where clearly his own sexual experiences, he's viewing them as a baseline that maybe not everyone can actually meet up to. And he does say that sex is kind of a messy thing with consent.
His opinion of it, of course, he's trying to justify what happened to him based on justify the whole situation based on what's happened to him. Of course you do. Your justification is based on your personal experiences in life. People will see things different, as we said just before. Depending on what culture you're brought up in, depends on where you view the age of consent most of the time. He was brought up in this. He had this sexual abuse happen to him. So his opinion on it is obviously going to differ from people who haven't had it. And it is, at the end of the day, he has had a mental trauma, and it is an issue. He needs to seek help. And I think people constantly attacking him, misinterpreting what he's saying, and using it to tear him down, not only in his... Let's be honest, he's not a technology editor at Breitbart. I mean, he left that long ago. To resign as the technology editor just sounds stupid, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because we all know he hasn't been for a while a technology editor.
Yeah.
But it's just, people have completely... They're using it as an excuse against the person because they don't like the person, instead of recognising this is somebody with an issue who needs to be treated with somebody who has an issue. Instead of tearing him down, why not try to, before doing all this and tearing him down just before the book deal, because it's a good time to do it, how about talk to him, or if you didn't agree with what he said, invite him to an interview and discuss these issues.
Well, yeah, a lot of the media clearly don't actually care about what he's said. They just like the sensationalism.
Yeah, it's a headline that sells a fucking article.
Well, he's clearly not a paedophile. He has not said he's engaged in any pedophilic acts.
And
no
not
one's
only
had
that,
any proof that he's engaged in any pedophilic acts.
As we said in his speech, he does not support paedophiles.
Yeah,
period. He thinks it's disgusting.
He's against paedophilia. He's said that many times, and I think a lot of people aren't really seeing him for, you have to kind of take these people who might have a fucked up view and say, okay, this is why this view is more kind of fucked up, and I can see why you've had this view because of your personal experience, but that's what you use. It's the same thing with people who might be racist because they've lived in an area where the majority of crime they've experienced has been from black people, and that's something where in a similar kind of fashion, those people have warped views, and instead of just...
Because they've only experienced one side of the issue.
Yeah, and instead of just kind of trying to break them down, you should go forward and try and speak logically with them. And obviously some people, you can't really have debate with it, and at that point, they're a lost cause, you can't really do much there. But Milo has always been someone who's very much up for debate. He enjoys being challenged, he enjoys being able to respond to that. But no one's really kind of gone and actually...
Given him the opportunity.
Yeah, no one has said to him, like, you're a victim, I feel like you need some help with this, I feel like your views have been distorted because you're a victim, and like they're just kind of ignoring that and instead going on this witch hunt to just basically completely destroy his career, which at the end of the day I don't think is destroyed. He says he has his media plans in place, he wants to do his own thing.
He's already got interest from other book dealers. I think
he could self-publish if he wanted to.
He could self-publish if he wanted to, and he's got enough of a fan base to be able to do that. I think this whole witch hunt, all it's done is, as he said in his speech, brought him more attention, brought him more fame, and while you could say it's negative in one light, you could say it's positive in another. I personally, I don't think that you should be drawing this much attention to not an insignificant issue, because it is a significant issue, especially when somebody is in this much media headlight. It's not right for somebody to say these comments, and that's why I really do appreciate Milo standing up there, justifying what he said and explaining what he said. He went into what he meant, especially with the whole boys issue. If you didn't know, it was part of the gay community, which I didn't know. I'm not part of the gay community. That boys can mean younger gays in the relationship.
Well, yeah, that's something that's kind of... It's often used to describe younger kind of gay people, and it's something that... Although I still think he was talking about quite young people in terms of American culture, I think if you go to places in Europe, which he said in the Joe Rogan interview, he talks about in places in Europe, people have a very different view on certain ages, where he kind of talks about, well, you might say a boy and you're referring to someone who's 17, for example. And in the US, people might be like, 17-year-old, that's crazy. But then if you go to the UK or other parts of Europe, people might be like, okay, a 17-year-old, like, it might be a bit young for an older man, it might seem a bit odd, but it's perfectly within acceptable age ranges.
Yeah, I mean, we see relationships all the time in media. You see Hugh Hefner, who's 80 years old, with his play girls, his bunnies, who are God knows how many years younger than him. And whilst we might get a little bit of controversy on that, especially from the feminists, you get a lot of people speaking on that issue. We have, for hundreds of years, had people of different ages with different ages. I mean, you have it nowadays. You have people who are 10, 15 years older than the person they're married to. I mean, it's about your connection with that person and the maturity of that person.
God. Well, I think kind of I get what you're saying. Like, it's kind of, you can have a justifiable relationship with a large age gap. Obviously, we have age of consent for a reason.
Yeah, age of consent is where it comes down. Age of consent needs to be there. Absolutely. There's no denying that fact.
Like, I don't know when he said boys exactly what he meant. I can say what he said about it, which I choose to believe, but you could just as easily say, no, I think he was talking younger and he's justifying it in advance. But what I would say generally is I think that, assuming he's saying the truth and he was taken out, he spoke out of context. Yeah, he spoke a bit wrongly on it. I think that you could look at someone like Stephen Fry, for example, who has a very, very young partner. Like, his partner is far younger than him, and I'm sure that he would call him a boy. I'm sure that in comparison, he would refer to him as a boy, and I believe what Milo said, because it does kind of follow the thing that I do see a lot of age disparity in gay relationships, because you do get that kind of almost like mentor-student relationship where they're helping them explore their sexuality, and I think Milo just took that to an extreme where he tried to make a joke about that based on his own personal sexual assault, and I think that joke is what's landed him in so much trouble, because he tried to turn something that's very serious into one of his provocative kind of jokey statements, and I think it's backfired. Isn't that what all
Milo does? Every single issue that he talks about is in a provocative way. Why has this issue in particular blown up? Why not his opinions on Muslims, his opinions on Black Lives Matter, What is it specifically about this?
I think it's because everyone is so unanimously against paedophiles. No one is supporting paedophiles. Like, people might say, you might support a paedophile in the sense where you're saying, well, they might have if they're not acting on it, you might not have a problem with it. Because you might say they have this problem, but they're not acting on it and it's not a problem. But other than that, for the most part, no one supports paedophiles. Everyone hates paedophiles to an extreme. Whereas you will find people who are against Islam, who are against feminism, who are against Black Lives Matter, who are against the left wing, against the right wing. Like, you'll find almost, like, not an even split, but you'll find people against almost everything, but there's a degree of discussion there. There's a degree of, well, I'm not against this, but another person is.
Yeah.
But on paedophilia,
I think in a moral sense, everybody is against paedophilia.
Yeah, paedophilia is very unanimously, like, I do not know a single person that would try and defend a paedophile who had acted on their stuff. You might say that person's sick in the head, they need help, but if someone's actually acted on it, you would still, like, I still think even if you saw them as severely mentally ill, you would still you'd still be like, this is a horrible person. Even if they have some severe problem with them, you would be like, this is a horrible person, they've done a horrible thing, regardless of the circumstance.
Then if we all have that opinion on that, then why are we not taking Milo's sexual abuse and his obvious mental trauma with the event? Why aren't people in the media taking that into account?
Well, that just comes down to sensationalism, I'd say, at the end of the day. That just comes from people trying to kind of, like, at the end of the day, like I said before, I think it's a witch hunt. And I think because when you're really trying to present a balanced viewpoint on something, which I will say not a lot of media does, but I would expect the kind of right wing to have more of a balanced viewpoint on it. Even on the right wing, you're seeing the majority of headlines are just quoting directly what he's saying and not really presenting a viewpoint on it. And I get it is kind of difficult to try and defend someone who so many people are unanimously against.
I mean, I don't think anyone defends his statements. I think at the end of the day, what he said was wrong because he didn't put that context into it during the statement, which is quite unlike Milo. Usually when he's talking about his points, he's quite firm. He explains what he means. I think this, especially in the podcast, it wasn't correctly portrayed across. It was a rush statement. It came out, and as Milo said, it's something that even slipped his mind. I mean, he didn't go back to it. He hasn't revisited it since until this moment.
He said he made a joke thinking, I can make a joke about this, I've experienced this. And then he said he's kind of quickly realised, like, well, maybe this has gone a bit far. With what you're saying about kind of the unanimous kind of against Milo in the media and not presenting this kind of, these counterpoints is, I think, mainly due to sensationalism and mainly due to the fact that at the end of the day, they're going to get more people clicking their websites and more people going on if your article's headline is Milo Yiannopoulos is a paedophile.
I understand that from that point of view, but then
it's not moral, but it's understandable.
No, it's not moral. It is understandable. We live in a capitalist society where the intention, every newspaper has to sell a thing. Every website has to make their money on the ads, clickbait, whatever you want to call it. They have to make their money. But don't you think then a right-wing paper that would publish a defense of Milo, especially in the middle of this basic shitstorm that's come his way, would have the same sort of traction?
But here's the problem, is basically there would be these right-wing newspapers defending Milo, but the thing you've got to understand is this was an overnight thing. It happened, the articles started rolling out, and they just rolled out one after the other, and before you knew it, it was a huge thing. It's happened over, like, pretty much overnight, it becoming a thing.
It's about 48 hours that this happened over.
The problem is when you're reading these articles, and you're hearing the quotes, and you're listening to what he actually said on the podcast, you won't necessarily know if that's out of context. You won't know what he's saying, and I think part of the problem is this happened so quickly, they didn't have time to build a defense, so you kind of have to just be like, this is just the facts of what has been said, and you're not drawing anything from it, because they can't jump to his defense. Because say if they jump to his defense, and then it comes out, he has said a lot of stuff supporting this, or there is this kind of hidden cache of him supporting pedophilia, they don't want to be lumped up in that. You've got to be very careful about that, especially if you run a news site. So obviously, they had to be more indifferent to it and present it more as just the facts.
Do you know what? You're correct on that, and especially since when all of these articles blew up, all of these people were posting the cut versions of the interview where they're just taking what he said completely out of context.
Yeah.
And I think that's where my main issue of this lies. I don't personally, well, I think most people can say they don't agree with what he said, and even Milo has said he doesn't agree with what he said at the time. It was out of phrase and it wasn't well expanded on and well pointed out. And do you know what? Everybody makes those mistakes when they're talking about an argument. People don't explain their points properly, they don't expand on it, and you don't always think about it in your head as you're doing it that you need to be expanding on those points. But especially with Milo's position, he should have been more aware of what he was doing at that time, and this is where the fault lies with him as well as all these sensationalists trying to basically destroy Milo. I mean, it's on both sides of this. They're at fault. Obviously, I don't agree with the witch hunt because he's a popular figurehead and people don't like him right now, which is why they've targeted him for this. But at the same time, you can't justify his comments. There is no justification to the comments.
Well, yeah, I think there's a lot of what Milo says which I personally disagree with, and I think there's a lot of Milo says that a lot of people disagree with. Because there is an element of reading between the lines, and with him you do have to understand...
Which is provocateur Milo, and what he's actually saying.
What's factual, what's him trying to be deliberately shocking or offensive, and what is he saying that's deliberately meant to make you uncomfortable. And even if you dig through all that, you will still find points of his that you disagree with, and I think on this issue it was just kind of complicated because there was no real, good core to dig through to. It was a mixture of comedy and his own warped views on a certain matter, and I think there wasn't... The problem this time is there wasn't that good core to dig through to, and I think the media obviously has blown this out of proportion and has created a situation that it shouldn't have really been this big. It should have been like, hey, Milo said this. Because you see the things like Trump is tweeting out or saying day in, day out, and there's a lot of shit in there that, it's pretty stupid. I'm not gonna lie. I'm someone who generally... I'm generally someone who sees that I think Trump was better option than Hillary, but that a lot of people take that as, oh, I fully support him, but then I'm like, no, a lot of what he's saying and doing is really dumb. And the same thing with Milo.
With anybody, I don't think anybody fully agrees with somebody, and if you fully agree with somebody on every single point, I think there's definitely something wrong with you. I don't think anybody
it's a hive mind collective.
It's a hive mind collective. It loses the human nature of it. I mean, humans were based on our own personal experience. If you're following everything everybody says, you're basically a clone of that person. You're saying that you've had the same experiences and you see the world in the exact same way. Not everybody sees the world in the exact same way, and if you come down to it at the end of the day, it might be that one person says they like Twix and the other says they like Snickers. Even that, there has to be something in there that you disagree with, and especially with politics, I think it's very important to have this sort of personal interpretation, your personal opinions. You might like Milo as a person, but I think it's still fine to disagree with him on certain issues. And I don't think he's ever said it's not fine to disagree with him on certain issues.
Yeah, he's someone who very much encourages debate. He really likes having people up to debate him. He does like shutting them down and upsetting them, but at the same time, he's not denying them a platform. If they come to one of his things and they make a point, when the audience starts...
He doesn't ban them from coming in.
If the audience speaks over him,
he tells them, shut up.
Or if the audience is yelling at them, he will say to them, quiet down, let's hear what they've got to say. Even if they say something they completely disagree with Milo's views, he would still be like, okay, of course, talk about it. He might not be the best at encouraging an open debate, but he definitely gives them a platform to make their points.
And I don't think Milo was given the correct platform on this situation. I think it was so rushed out and he was forced into making a quick decision. Yeah. And I think Breitbart on this has, once again, I mean, we had the same sort of thing with the whole Ben Shapiro with Breitbart. I think it has failed on defending one of its senior editorial staff. I think they could have been a lot more supportive with him. Yes, Breitbart has a responsibility to the rest of its staff, and it has a responsibility as a newspaper as a news source to disagree with something like this, and obviously to talk to Milo, and whatever happens behind closed doors at Breitbart would stay behind closed doors at Breitbart. They're a private organisation. I don't expect them to have ever discussed what happened behind those doors, but I think they still should have stood behind their reporter. And whilst Milo says that this was his choice and his choice alone. Personally, I think there might be a bit more going on, especially with...
Yeah, I feel like there was, with any kind of situation like this, regardless of how much it might have been his final decision to leave, there was obviously going to be pressure.
Well, yeah, with Alex Marlow's comments, I mean...
Yeah,
after
they
something
said
like
they
that,
couldn't
that's
condone
from
his comments, and they said...
That's from the editor-in-chief, Sam. I mean, what... when you've got something coming out from the editor-in-chief of your own organisation, how... It's not about defending your senior staff, but you're basically putting them out onto the open fire and saying, here we go, deal with it, it's all by yourself.
Yeah, and I think Milo has kind of come under unfair attack based on what he's saying, when really what he's saying isn't that much more shocking than what you see from a lot of Black Lives Matter protests, for example, which is a movement where I really agree with the ideas behind it, but the actual movement itself, I think, has kind of been warped and destabilized to a point where it's really not good. And I think that what he says is no worse, and I'd even go as far to say as it's probably not as bad as a lot of these Black Lives Matter protests. You get people chanting that cops should be killed, or like fuck white people, for example, which I feel like people are kind of seeing him as this big provocateur, because I think conservatism right now is kind of seen as it's kind of seen as more negative, and I think the combination of him putting that in an open platform but being almost a negative example of that, it's kind of like, to these people, it's just like, it's like the best thing ever. It's like the person who you see as the boogeyman just basically said a horrible thing, and you
he basically left himself open, and he gave you the knife, and you chose to stab him.
Yeah.
And instead of taking the approach that I think a lot of sort of people in Milo's position would have, and having that open platform to discuss it with Milo, it was rushed to the fires, put these articles out, and frame in a way which I think every single not left-wing article, I think every single article who published this stuff about Milo, they know he's not a paedophile, they know he doesn't condone paedophilia. I think it's stupid to say that he condones paedophilia after just looking through and seeing what he said before. I don't think, as we were discussing, I think anyone agrees with paedophilia. It's a disgusting matter, and people who practice it definitely should be off the streets, locked up for the rest of their life. I think they rushed to the fire, they put him in there, and instead of giving him that platform to speak, invite him, say, all this has come out, let's speak to Milo about this issue and let him explain it like he did at the conference, like he did in his interview. He explained what he meant. If he'd done that on a platform before all these articles had come out, then we'd have a much different reaction than we have today.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, I think it's a shame, but I have no doubt that he'll bounce back from it. I think that there's been an overwhelming amount of support. If you look at the hashtag I stand with Milo, which comes quite soon after the hashtag I stand with PewDiePie, oddly enough. And I think you see a lot of this kind of attacking of people who are satirizing someone who satirized something that's kind of more serious. I think there's been a lot of attacking of those kind of people, and I think that's not necessarily explicitly positive or negative. I'm not saying that people should necessarily satirizing these horrible things, but I'm not necessarily saying they shouldn't either. I think it's kind of, it's down to personal interpretation. It depends on the
context as well.
Yeah, it's the context, and it's also, well, what's your style of humour? A lot of people I know wouldn't appreciate certain dark jokes, but they'll really appreciate
others. Well, we look at
certain.
stuff like Charlie Brooks' Black Mirror. It's a very, very, very dark interpretation, and it's, I mean, you look at any of the episodes, you look at the most recent series, when they're putting the soldiers were seeing the peasants as evil, vile creatures. I mean, that's a very touchy subject matter right now, and I guess you could refer to it however you want. You could, I've seen a lot of people compare it to how the West is viewing Islam right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, it depends where your sort of humour and your interests lie. I mean, people do like dark subject matter, and especially when they've experienced some of that themselves, a lot of people do find humour in it and comfort in it. I mean, it's what you feel is correct, and don't get me wrong, everybody is entitled to their opinion. People are entitled to say they don't agree with this, or they think this is a step too far. But trying to destroy somebody's career over it, when I think if you have two brain cells to rub together. As we said, you can't call him a paedophile. You look back in what he said, you look back at what most of them say, you can't, people who accuse him of anti-Semitism or, white power, being racist, being a pedophile, where's the basis of fact in any of this?
A lot of what has caused the hate against Milo hasn't necessarily been his points, because if you actually listen to his points, they might sound quite shocking at first. When you boil them down to what he's actually saying, the majority of the time...
When you take away the provocative bits of them...
Yeah, the majority of it is actually something that is actually, like, generally either reasonable, or it's something that is at least not a horrific opinion. It's something that you could see someone having an opinion and you wouldn't necessarily hate them for it. I think the problem comes from a lot of his support, and a lot of the people who support him, I think... It's difficult to ignore, because he has often said times you can't hold him accountable for the people who support him, but I think that's that's a massive oversight. There are a lot of people who he clearly encourages them, and they do genuinely hold racist views or misogynistic views, and it's something where I think him completely ignoring that and saying, right, this isn't to do with me, that's not really the right way to go about it. Because you do have to take a degree of responsibility for the people you're encouraging.
Yeah, you're in the spotlight, you're in the media. If these people are surrounding you and you don't agree with their views, you have a responsibility to shut them down and say, I don't want you following me. I don't want your support. I don't agree with what you're promoting. I don't want you to be supporting me.
Yeah, and I think... that's a big part of the problem. It's mainly just people...
He hasn't done that, I think a lot of these sort of things, he chooses to say it's not his problem what people do. With the whole Ghostbusters scandal, he said he made very controversial arguments and...
Well, he said that... Basically, to dumb down his points, he said Leslie Jones was ugly. That was the end of his argument.
Yeah.
And... regardless of your own personal views on the matter, that was an opinion he was stating, and to state almost anyone else is ugly or attractive. So you saw a shit ton of people saying Donald Trump was unattractive, but no one cared about that.
You saw a shit ton of people take the piss out of his hair.
It's not actually a toupee. I've seen video proof. It's real. But
okay.
But but thing is, the problem was that it wasn't from the comments, because if someone says Donald Trump's ugly, I don't care. He is pretty ugly. Yeah. If someone says that Leslie Jones is ugly, I don't think she's that great looking either. The problem came from people who follow him who started making...
took it over the top.
They started making racist comments, and the point... he was being... a lot of newspapers and stuff at the time questioned him on this and said, all these people who support you are making racist comments towards Leslie Jones, and he just basically said, well, I didn't say that.
It's not my problem.
These aren't... like... these people might have taken that from what I'm saying, but that's not what I meant. I don't feel like... I'm not racist in any way. I don't hold any racist views. I do not dislike black people. In fact, he very much likes black people, specifically their dicks. But he tried to make the point that basically he's not responsible, but you might not be directly responsible, but you have to say...
you have an indirect responsibility.
Well, you have a platform where you have the chance to say to these people, you're fucking stupid.
Fuck off.
You're wrong. Like, screw you for besmirching my name by saying this stuff and linking it back to me.
And
because I don't think that.
These people are the ones who got his shut off Twitter. It wasn't his comments to... sorry, I've forgotten her name.
Leslie Jones.
Leslie Jones, there we go. That's my bad. Apologies, Leslie Jones. But it wasn't his direct comments to Leslie Jones that got him chucked off. You see people all the time making these sorts of comments. Look at all the comments towards Donald Trump. All these Twitter people. They didn't get booted off Twitter, did they, Sam?
Well, it's like... you could argue the same thing with how people are talking about fucking Caitlyn Jenner when they first came out. And basically, I used they there because, yeah, like, I don't really like Caitlyn Jenner that much. But anyway, nothing...
Again, very controversial topic that we could get onto at another time.
Anyway,
let's stay on topic.
I feel like at that point I'm only disrespecting that because I just don't like Caitlyn Jenner generally. But anyway, I feel like with that, a lot of people said Caitlyn Jenner is really ugly and looks horrible and looks like a man still. And that, I would say...
well, we saw after the cover of Vanity Fair, all of that was coming out.
Yeah,
all of that was on Twitter.
It's a similar degree of offence.
Didn't get
it's
banned.
a similar degree of offence as well. And one who said Caitlyn Jenner was being targeted because it was seen as it was seen as a lesser. It was seen as, okay, you're targeting this group. It's not as bad to target this group as it is to target black people, and I think...
But Milo has been the reason that all these people with single-digit Twitter followers or no Twitter followers or a couple of hundred, whatever. Milo has a big platform.
Well,
he has a lot of people, and they took Twitter because Milo didn't turn away these people who were making these racist comments. That's why Milo got banned, and it's because his own fault in that situation. Instead of turning these people away, saying you're speaking my name, you're promoting hate, using me as your underlying reason.
He doesn't necessarily have a responsibility to sort those people out. At the end of the day,
no, it's not his responsibility to go each and every one of them and say,
but he
fuck
should,
off, leave me alone, I don't want you. But,
you don't represent me because you... If
or in an interview, say, they don't represent me. Don't say that it's not your... But he says they're not my problem. There's a difference from saying they're not my problem.
Well, he said they don't represent his views. Those are not his views. But I think the problem is he almost this is again a problem with kind of wording and kind of how he structured it. Is he needs to, in a lot of these cases, he needs to explicitly say, I am against these people. Not just they don't represent my views, but I do not want them as fans.
Yeah, I think that is where it comes down to, and because he doesn't explicitly say it in these situations, I don't think when you're talking person to person, I don't think you necessarily, that's the word I'm looking for, need to say that you do it. But when you're on such a big platform, you have that responsibility. You're reaching out to these millions of people. You have that responsibility to say that you don't agree with these issues. And he doesn't... Yes, he's a provocateur. We can go with whatever we want, but at the end of the day, he doesn't do it, and he brings this sort of stuff on himself a lot of the time. He brought it on with the Leslie Jones thing, and he's brought it on with this. And at the end of the day, his comeuppance have been served to him. I think he's going to learn a lesson from this. I think he's going to look in much more depth before he says stuff from now. But I wish Milo the best of luck on his future. I hope his book deal gets signed, because I do want to read that book. I think it will be an interesting read.
Yeah.
I'm
he said himself he needs to add another chapter.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a bit of a chapter on the priest in this one. What about you? I think listen, best of luck to Milo. At the end of the day, I'm hoping that he bounces back and is stronger than ever from this. But I think it's very important. He needs to watch what he says. Yeah, we have freedom of speech, and yeah, he's entitled to say these things. But he needs to be looking... It's very different. He can't... I think he still considers himself as a sole person. He's speaking out his views, but he needs to recognise that he's reaching these millions of people, and he needs to be careful in what he says to an extent. An extent.
You don't have to police everything you say to be a little bit more careful with what you're saying.
Yeah, we don't need political correctness. But you need to watch yourself. There's a big difference between that.
And you can see it. You can see how much. I think you can see he definitely. I think he has an understanding of that change is happening now, because I'm pretty sure that press conference is the first time I've ever seen him apologise. I've never seen Milo
in that press conference. That is the first and last time you'll ever see him apologise, and I think that is what we'll take away from that. That he will learn from this mistake, because this is a mistake on his part. It might. There's a lot of surrounding factors on it. There's a lot of other things. But at the end of the day, this is down to Milo's mistake.
Yeah.
He made a mistake, he owned up to it, which is a lot more than a lot of people do. A lot of people can ride it out, ignore everything, and they don't own up to it. He stood there in front of all these people and owned up to his mistake. And I think he deserves recognition in part for that. I think it's a very brave thing to do.
Yeah, especially if someone who's built their entire career on being offensive and not apologising for that. I think it was quite a big thing for him to actually say, I'm sorry that these comments have been interpreted like this. But yeah, I think this is a good time to wrap it up. I think we've spoken pretty much as we can about it.
This has been Degregate Media.
Hopefully we'll see you again.